Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Fly with Us podcast. This podcast is bringing the art of conversation, self love, self care, mental health care and protection, life lessons, love lessons, and everything in between. Today, we're going to talk about the negative mind. I'm your girl, Lady Bounce.
And I am Picket Fence. Today's mindfulness minute is called Tired but Not Defeated. When difficult times come, I turn my thoughts away from things of this world. I look within for the hidden treasures. Today you may be feeling bone tired, like you have been working for countless years, only to see your efforts come to nothing. You struggle with debt, with poor health, with family troubles, and nothing ever seems to improve. At times like this, you can best practice detachment. As you see clearly that the world is full of troubles, as you release your grip on worldly bonds, you see the divine more clearly. The bliss of pure being opens to you as soon as you begin to look for it. Today, sit in silent expectation for at least 20 to 30 minutes. Try to concentrate on complete receptivity, on listening as intently as possible. Let your whole mind and body be attuned to the place and time. You may have some sort of empathy or you may not, but stay with the experience. Resist the temptation to yield to any inner monologue or to label or define the experience. Avoid reflecting on the past or fascinating about the future. Word up. So what that is saying is basically be in the moment. We always think about what's next, or we think about the millions of things that are on our list to do. And a lot of us reflect on past negative thoughts, which our show is about. So I think I usually wait towards the end, but let me intro this in at the beginning of the show, because this show is about brain science today. So brain science.
Okay, so as part of what we're talking about, the negative mind, we're going to start with cognitive restructuring. How do we do that? First, we want to hit the pause button. Cognitive restructuring can be useful in many situations, but the best time to use it is when you notice that you are feeling a strong negative emotional reaction to something, especially if your response seems out of proportion to what happened. So that would be the same as overreacting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our typical way of responding to a sudden wave of negative feeling is to act on instinct. We feel angry, we lash out. When we feel anxious, we hide. When we feel sad, we go have a beer. Right? So, as an alternative, ask yourself, what is going on? What am I feeling? And how do I move forward from this feeling? The second thing you want to do is identify the trigger. Once you've noticed that this strong, sudden emotion is happening, a triggering event is often something that happens in our external environment. A coworker making a sarcastic comment, our spouse gives us the look, or a car cuts us off on the freeway. To help identify the triggering event in a given situation, use the who, what, when, and where. Same thing we learned in school when we learned how to write, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to ask ourselves, who is present with me at the time that I got upset? Because we're social animals by nature, people often play either a direct or an indirect role in our emotion. Then you want to ask yourself, what happened? Literally ask yourself what happened. Sort out the things that happened to you leading up to the moment where you felt upset. When did you start feeling that feeling? What happened immediately before this? This question is particularly important if you're doing cognitive restructuring hours or days after the fact. Then you want to ask yourself, where did it occur? Often the initial triggers for becoming upset are part of our connected physical environment. So like, where were you, right? Step 3, notice your automatic thoughts. Automatic thoughts are our default initial interpretations of what happened to us. They're almost always spontaneous. We don't initiate them typically purposely, they just kind of happen. So if someone cuts you off while you're driving, your automatic thought might be to yell out, "What a jerk," and flip the bird, right? So we have these automatic thoughts all the time. Most of the time, we either don't notice them at all or we're only vaguely aware of them. So when it comes to cognitive restructuring, it is important to build the habit of becoming more aware of your automatic thoughts and really examining them closely. Sorry for my paper
Word
flip.
up.
Wait, and then
Word up.
you need to identify your emotional reaction and note how intense this reaction is. That's kind of deep. Let's hold on to that for a minute. Identify that emotional reaction and note how intense it is. Ask yourself, is this warranted? Is the level of reaction I'm giving needed for this situation? How intensely do I feel it? And where do I feel it in my body? That is important because you want to be able to control your stress response as much as possible. The next thing you want to do is generate alternative thoughts. So once you've identified your trigger, you've noticed your automatic thoughts, you've taken note of your emotional reaction, the next thing you need to come up with is alternative thoughts for each of your initial automatic thoughts. So you're going to basically go back and rethink your way through this situation that has you upset or that has your mind going in a negative way. And then the last thing we want to do is re-rate the intensity of our emotional response. So after you've generated hopefully more realistic and positive thoughts, return to your emotions that you identified and reassess their intensity. Almost always they will have gone down at least modestly as a function of questioning your automatic thoughts and generating alternative and more realistic ones. This final step is crucial because noticing and feeling the relief from your negative emotion, decreasing an important reinforcer of the new habit, is cognitive restructuring. In other words, you're much more likely to stick with it as a habit and benefit in the long term if you get the reward of even slightly lower negative feelings as well. Word up.
Word up. So what we're talking about today is negative bias. And when you think about negative bias, let's break it down. For a person, have you ever thought of yourself as dwelling on insults, fixating on your mistakes, criticisms of the greater impact of compliments? And let's break that part down especially. Let's say if you were getting a review from a job.
Okay.
There's always a point in a job where the supervisor or manager says that these are the things you need to improve on. And as soon as you hear those aspects that they're telling you, constructive criticism, a lot of times we become fixated on just the stuff that wasn't good on a review. We totally ignore the fact that you may be superior or adequate in each section of your job. You fixate on the things that they said were that you should, not even bad. You fixate on the things that they point out you may need improvement on. And that sours all of the good that may be in that review. Negative bias is a thing that is embedded in our genes through evolution. From the time of our ancestors, where we didn't have society structure, we didn't have cultural structure. We're talking about our primitive ancestors that basically had, for people who are into metaphysics, you only had to live basically off your first chakra, the red chakra, that may be the what we call in modern times the flight or fight response. Basically, you're just dealing with survival. And for some reason, this trait has stuck with us, even though that we're in a completely 180 of society 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It's something that has stuck with us. Something that we still need, but not to the degree that our ancestors needed. Every situation might not be a fight or flight. And if you're a person that has dealt with children or not even small children, but teenagers or even millennials, that may be, you may see or notice an imbalance when it comes to that. Because it's like, if you ever talk to someone in those different age brackets, it's like, not only can they not handle the constructive criticism, they'll let you know up front. They'll blatantly out loud be offended. A few years ago, you used to get, like I talked about, getting a job review. You may be upset, and you may later go and constantly reflect on the bad parts, but it's more internalized. And if you're a person that is done with something with a person millennial or lower, you'll see that they will tell you, "No, you tripping. You can't. I can't believe you said that. You must be tripping. You crazy. I know I do this." Have you seen that?
Absolutely.
Have you seen that in the kids you work with? Another portion of negative bias is that, and I see this on our society as a broad view of our society, is that we are drawn to negative thinking. It's in, I know I've said 1 billion times on the show, our programming is embedded in being drawn to negative over positive. We fiend for the bad news. We fiend for the gossip, the drama. And it's really crazy for like celebrities. It's like I don't know if we feel like we know these celebrities and feel that they owe their lives to us. But we're so embedded if something is going wrong with them or something negative press about them. We're what was the saying when you worked there for the news station? If it bleeds, it leads. Yes. The first thing they give you is the most horrific thing possible. Somebody got shot up. 30 people shot up and dead killed it. And celebrity gossip. Did you hear what so-and-so did with another girl behind his wife's back? Did you hear about so-and-so has a new sex tape?
Wow,
sex all over the place.
Twice last week.
And so it's like, those are the things. And to make it more clear, for people who know even a simple amount about technology and algorithms, have you noticed like your positive post or even your friend's positive post gets less interaction than a negative post? And you've seen me, the king of controversial, every once in a while. When I say something that people like, "No, you didn't say that. Why would you say that?" And they come at me, but I don't care. You can come at me. Come at me with your digital kung fu. I don't care. I feel it is something that needs to be said or attention needs to be drawn to. But because we fiend so much on the negative is popular, that if somebody says something against it, like, "Hey, there's an alternative. There's a positive alternative," or "This thing that you think is great is really a thing of negativity," they become offended, easily offended. It's almost like that review. "Oh, you said something bad, and I'm upset about it, because I'm so drawn to negativity that I actually think that that negative thing is a positive. It's like a flip-flop. You know what I mean?
I do. So first of all, I want to say a couple things about what you said, because I was listening intently. Next time that you decide that you want to tell my business, just at me, okay? Because I felt every bit of what you just said. Like, I feel like you were trying to put me on blast on my own show. So we'll deal with that off camera, but I definitely feel some type of way. But in saying that I feel some type of way, and saying that I feel and not fully understand it, it is because the way that we are wired as humans is those negative thoughts tend to take up more space. They get more attention. They're more they last longer in our brains. So when it comes to where you were talking about that fight or flight kind of response, thing, that's where that comes from. If it hurts, it lasts longer. The pain lasts longer. And just like you said, I actually did receive a review at work recently, and it was good all the way through, but there was one negative thing in there, and I was upset for quite a few days. Like, I was really upset, and because I was upset, I had to go back and reread it, because I didn't even realize that overall it was a glowing evaluation, and it was fantastic. So again, that goes back to that cognitive restructuring about thinking about how we think about things that are set out to upset us, and looking at how we focus on it. Now, before I started on this self-work journey, I was that negative person. I only saw the negative, and no matter what the situation was, it could be, something that is supposed to be happy, and I would see the negative in it instantly. Like, that would be the first thing that pop in my head, and everybody else around me is going, nobody thought that but you. And I'm like, you didn't see that? And they're like, do we see what? So it's really a daily work in progress to keep that negative mind at bay, because it's so easy to revert back to it. And in terms of how we think and how we move through life, we like things when they're easy. We like the easy way out. We like things that are comfortable. So the negativity is easy because it doesn't require a lot of focus. You can always find something negative in what you're looking at or what you're dealing with. So it's easy for your mind to just go straight there. When somebody, cuts you off in traffic, then you're like, the whole rest of the time you're driving, you're like cursing every driver. And it was one person that did it 5 miles back, and you're still holding on to it because those negative instances seem to stick out on our mind even more. And then if it is a traumatic event, it really sticks in your mind, because trauma rewires your brain and it affects your body. It affects everything. There's a book I'm in the middle of reading right now. I'm doing a book study on, called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about how trauma and those negative thoughts, where they end up in your body, where you store them at, in your neck and your shoulders and your tense, and then sometimes in your gut health. You wonder why you have acid reflux, or why you can't eat certain foods, or why you're always, seem to be sick. It is because that trauma and those negative thoughts that you keep swirling in your head is really messing with your body. So this journey that we're on, that we're taking people on with us, is really so important. It is really a life-saving journey. Being on this journey of this self-work and this mental health care and protection, it's majorly important. It is the one thing that will prolong your life or shorten your life, depending on how you address the things that are meant to upset you, or sent to upset you.
Oh, 100, as the kids say. 100. Keep it a band. Definitely. Let's give some other examples of like negative bias. When I think about it and reading the article from the training you took on negative bias, I think about other situations that it relates to. I think about, like, for example, your peer group from your teenage or young adult years.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever, like, been away or not in contact with some of those peers that you were real close to? And now we look at 10, 15, 20 years later, they're still stuck on the same things they were stuck on before. And usually it's something negative. Say, for example, like, if your friend, like, when you're young, you don't have the mental capacity that you should have as an older an adult. And they're still into the same things that were negative, like he say, she say type stuff, or I don't mess with so-and-so because so-and-so messy, or, they're still trying to go out and find an old enemy to get in an argument with. Not avoid old enemies, but they're hoping to see an old enemy. If I see so-and-so, B gonna get smacked tonight. It's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and when you evolve, like we all should be trying to do during this unfolding of life, if you do that, you really think, like, man, you still on that?
Right.
You're really still on that? Or even a situation like somebody may have been upset with you about something from years. There was something like really petty, and you could have apologized about it, but they still have a negative mind state about the experience. They haven't done with the experience, even though you may have apologized, or it may not have been something that you needed to apologize for. They're just focused on a negative thought of the situation, like we just talked about. They're still dwelling on it. And if you're still dwelling on a petty situation from years past, you need to reevaluate some things. Really.
Well, I totally agree with everything that you said. So, with that, we've explained, the problem, the situation. We know that we can restructure our brains to not automatically go to the negative, but that takes time. It takes time and it takes practice. So give me your top 3 things that you do to keep your mind from being negative.
One of them I'll say for the self-care assignment, but the second thing is, I would say that, and this is real big to me, and it happened recently, and I just talked about it, about apologizing, is be really forgiving. Be really forgiving. I won't go into details because I'm not about exposing people, but there was a situation with somebody that had a problem that really wasn't a problem with me. And I guess the person come to some type of realization that the problem really wasn't with me. And the person didn't say, I'm sorry. And like I've said a couple of weeks ago, I heard a song where a guy says, sometimes you have to accept apologies you haven't been given. But the person said that they wanted to, just forget about it, squash it. I don't want to think about it. And my reaction was, okay. Because I already knew that the situation wasn't really about me. And I could also, not thinking negatively, I could say that I could tell that the person was really sincere about if they've had some kind of rethinking or re-encounter in their mind about the whole situation, and they said they want to forget it and squash it, whatever. Okay, cool. So that will be my second thing, is to really be forgiving. If somebody is asking for your forgiveness, why not? Now that doesn't mean that you have to be buddies and y'all hanging out every weekend or kicking flavors, chopping it up all the time. But forgiveness, as we've talked about before, is not about the other person. It's about you. Not that I'm worried about the situation, but I'm glad that you have come to some realization or a re-realization of the situation.
Mm.
Good for you.
Right.
And that you had the cojones to say, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Right.
Cool. Cool. And I think because of the negative mind, a lot of people be like, nah, bump that. So on this high, blah, 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 you was tripping. You say, hey, I want to be done with it. Cool. You said 3, right? Top 3. The third thing, which is probably the hardest, is don't dwell on it. Whatever the negative situation is, which is the very hardest. Because like we talked about, because of evolution, that is embedded in our DNA, that we, even if we aren't necessarily drawn to be involved with negative stuff, we can't help recanting. And the article, that you came with about this show, talks about that. We see the mind is almost programmed to recant more negative than positive things. Mm-hmm. So I would say, when recanting, instead of recanting on the rethinking of the negative, try to think of all the good, especially when it comes to like relationships. Yeah, a situation may have happened, and that situation may be horrible. If it's something that's just like unforgivable, I'm not telling you just like somebody in the beat your mama up, you should probably want to always beat that person. I'm not going to front here. But I'm saying if it's something that you know in your mind was petty, try to focus on the good times. If you had an old friend that you had fallen out with, like for example, I have a niece that was friends with another girl for childhood, and they fell out over clothes. And that friendship died because of clothes. And of course, the negative mind may say, oh, if they fell out over clothes, then it wasn't no real friendship. That may not be the case. The case may be the way that we think about the falling out. It may not, we need to think about the good times that we have, which may help you be like, that was dumb that we fell out over clothes. And there may be some other under the surface things that it wasn't just about the clothes. And if you can focus on the good things that you had in that relationship and recognize that it was deeper than the clothes, maybe if you have the strength to do that, you may have the strength to uncover the deeper thing that it is that you really fell out about, and maybe you can deal with that. So recount the situation differently, and try to recount the situation in a more positive than just the negative, especially if you were friends with somebody for years and you fall out over something petty.
Right.
You know.
All right, so we're coming up on time, so I'll do my like top 2 because we're like running out of time now.
Right.
But my first one is to put yourself in the other person's shoes and think about where it came from, where their attitude or their lashing out may have come from. And then I want you to try to look at the bigger picture. In 5 seconds, in 5 minutes, in 5 hours, is this going to mean anything? Is this going to be important? Looking at the bigger picture, it gives you another opportunity to kind of restructure your mind and restructure how you're thinking about the situation.
Word up, dope. And I think I even said my top 1. I said it in my top 3 basically, and which I was trying to save for the self-care, but we'll go into it now. So like I said, we're running out of time. Reframe your situation. How you talk to yourself about events and experience and people plays a large role in shaping how you interpret events. When you find yourself interpreting something in a negative way or only focusing on the bad aspects of a situation, look for ways to reframe events in a more positive light. This doesn't mean ignoring potential dangers or wearing rose-colored glasses, the old saying. It simply means refocusing so that you can give yourself an equal weight of good events. And like I said in the last one, my top three, which was really my one, really weigh out the situation without just thinking about the bad. Really say, is this bad? Take a moment to say, is this really bad? Is it an unforgivable act? Did they murder somebody? Did they beat you up? Those type of things may not be forgivable. But if it's something corny like, the B knew I was wearing a red dress, why she wear a red dress? That stuff is stupid. But because we're so programmed in this reality world and things like that we're in competition when we really shouldn't be in competition, reframe the situation. Always, if you feel bad about something, step back and analyze it on an equal plane. So that's the self-care assignment for today. If you feel bad about a situation, reframe it. Instead of going into that argument, walk away from it and take some time to think about the situation. Word up.
Go ahead.
I'm cool. That's all I got to say about it. Reframe the situation is this week's self-care. If you feel like you're in a bad situation, instead of engaging in an argument or a fight before it gets physical, walk away and give yourself time to really analyze the situation and balance it more on the positive side.
Word up.
Word up.
So, as always, thank you for flying with us. You can find us on all your social media outlets and platforms and wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I'm your girl, Lady Bounce.
And I am Picket Fence.
And we out of here.
Peace.
Peace.